Does this feel familiar? You're checking your phone, minding your own day, and suddenly, there it is, the message. Hey, stranger, how have you been? Or maybe, I thought about you today. It's him, the man who disappeared without a word, without an explanation, the one who made you question yourself, wonder if you came on too strong, if you asked for too much from someone who never offered anything real to begin with. You stare at the message, you read it, then read it again, and you don't respond. Not because you don't want to, but because part of you is confused and the other part, exhausted. Because this time, the silence isn't his. It's yours. A silence filled with thoughts, with questions, with that all too familiar mix of nostalgia, anger, and a deep, aching desire not to fall again into something that once hurt you. So why do they come back? What does that message really mean? Has he changed? Has he realized your worth? Or is he simply checking in to see if you're still there, still available, still willing to give him what he never knew how to cherish? And this is where the reflection begins. Because here's a truth many women have had to learn the hard way. Not everyone who returns does so because they value you. Sometimes they just want to see if the door still opens. This is an intimate conversation. From one woman with scars to another. From someone who's already risen from that same place. So listen not with fear, but with clarity. Open your eyes, because there are signs we can no longer afford to ignore. Today, we talk about emotionally low-value men. Not to judge, but to understand. Because when you understand, you choose differently. And when you choose from a place of self-love, the story changes. As Carl Jung once said, when you truly love yourself, you stop accepting crumbs, not because you're harsh, but because you finally understand your worth. So get ready. Get ready to face the patterns that have kept you stuck, to close the doors that lead only to confusion, and to open yourself to relationships that see you, value you, and choose you without hesitation. It often starts the same way. He disappears without warning, without a fight, without a reason. One day, he's there, checking in on your day, sending memes, saying things like, honestly, something serious wouldn't scare me. And then, suddenly, nothing. No message, no explanation, not even a goodbye. And of course, you start wondering, did I say something wrong? Did I do too much? Not enough? You replay the conversations. You scroll through old messages, searching for signs. You doubt yourself. And then comes the ache of waiting for a message that never arrives. Days go by, then weeks, sometimes months. And suddenly, just like that, he's back. Hey, I've been busy. I've been thinking about you. And in that moment, something stirs. Because your heart remembers. A part of you still wants to believe that his return means something. That maybe finally he's realized what he lost. But friend, hear me clearly. A man who disappears without explanation and returns as if nothing happened is not respecting your time or your heart. His actions tell you everything. You are not someone he feels responsible for emotionally. He is not thinking about your feelings, only his own impulses. This isn't random. It's not just how he island. It's emotional selfishness. It's the kind of behavior that prioritizes his confusion, his crisis, his need for space over your right to feel safe, seen, and emotionally secure. You deserve more. You deserve someone who doesn't treat your heart like an option. So if he comes back again with charm, with old jokes, with memories meant to soften you, pause. And remember, you're not who you were when he left. And the worst part? When he returns, he expects you to be exactly where he left you, as if your life had been on pause just waiting for him. And far too often, out of hope or longing, some women let him back in. They respond. They accept the excuse. They try once more to make sense of the senseless. And just like that, without even realizing it, they begin to normalize instability. They start to accept the idea that a man can vanish when it suits him, and reappear whenever he feels like it, without explanation, without apology, without consequences. But let's be clear, that's not love. That's a relationship built on his comfort, not your well-being. Carl Jung once said, "You are not responsible for the behavior of others, only for how you treat yourself." So what are you telling yourself when you allow someone to walk in and out of your heart like a revolving door? When you let him return without accountability, you're not just forgiving him, you're unintentionally whispering to yourself, "Maybe this is all I deserve." But that's not true. A man like this doesn't leave because he's confused. He leaves because he can, because your emotions aren't something he values, because your devotion isn't something he cherishes, because somewhere inside him, he knows he can vanish and you'll still be there. And when he comes back, it's not out of love, it's out of need. Maybe he got bored. Maybe something else fell through. Maybe he's just checking that the door is still open. But you are not a reset button. You are not an emotional safe haven he can crawl into when his world goes quiet. You are a whole woman with real emotions, with wounds that don't deserve to be reopened by someone who never knew how to stay. Recognizing that truth isn't being cold, it's being wise, emotionally wise, because love, real love, doesn't vanish without warning. And if someone truly values you, they won't disappear without explanation. And if they do, they'll return with accountability, with clarity, with the maturity to face you with respect. So the next time an unexpected hey lights up your screen, ask yourself, is he coming back out of love or out of habit? Is he truly returning or just repeating the same cycle? Is he ready to do something different or hoping everything will stay exactly the same? Don't be afraid to close the door that only ever opens when it's convenient for him. Carl Jung also said, respect begins when you decide never to allow again what once broke you. And that respect, it begins with you. Sometimes it's not even what he says, it's what hides behind his words. He doesn't say much. Just a dreamed of you, a thought about you today. The vague, hollow, I miss talking to you. He doesn't ask how you are. He doesn't say he wants to come back. He offers nothing solid, nothing real. Just words thrown into the wind, like casting a net, hoping something, anything bites. And you freeze, because you were finally trying to forget, to move on, to close that chapter, but that small, vague, seemingly harmless message stirs everything up again. Your heart races, your mind floods with memories and what-ifs. You wonder, does he miss me? Does he still feel something? But here's the truth. Those messages aren't bridges. They're bait. Calculated attempts to see if they still hold space in your heart. To check if their absence left the door ajar. To confirm they're still in your energy, even if they don't deserve to be. And that's not reconnection. That's manipulation. Because real reconnection takes courage, clarity, and emotional responsibility. But his message is vague on purpose, because vagueness protects him. If he offers nothing, he risks nothing. But if you respond, he still gets the validation, without giving anything in return. Carl Jung teaches us, what you give, you receive. So if you give your attention to empty words, don't be surprised when all you receive in return is confusion. Let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone access to your peace, not even the ones who once made your heart race. You deserve more than breadcrumbs, more than guesswork, more than recycled excuses wrapped in vague texts. You deserve love that shows up, that speaks clearly, that doesn't vanish. And most of all, you deserve to choose yourself. If you keep giving your energy to someone who doesn't even know what he wants, you don't just end up confused. You end up drained, emotionally worn out, stuck in a cycle of waiting for vague words to magically become certainty. And the truth is, they rarely do. Because this kind of man, he's not truly interested in how you are. He's interested in whether you still miss him. He doesn't want to build anything meaningful with you. He just wants to maintain a grip on your heart enough to feed his ego, but not enough to give you peace. And that, my friend, is not love. It's ego dressed up as interest. It's emotional ambiguity disguised as care. It's control. He sends a message. He waits. He watches your reaction. And based on what he gets, he decides, should I come closer? Should I disappear again? Or maybe I'll just leave her right there, confused, stirred up, and still hoping. It's not connection. It's a game. A cruel one. One that traps you. One that makes you feel like you owe him your emotions, like you're emotionally indebted for the scraps he throws your way. And many women fall into this trap, not because they're weak, but because we've been taught to romanticize everything, to see every gesture as love, to believe that if he thinks of you, it must mean something deep. But we have to learn to separate love from habit, genuine care from ego-driven curiosity, commitment from validation-seeking behavior. Don't confuse his "I was just thinking about you" with intention. Don't mistake a sweet phrase for a real plan. Because if his message doesn't come with honesty, if it doesn't lead to a conversation that builds something real, then it's not "I miss you." It's "I want to know if I still matter to you." But you, my friend, are not a radar. You are not a checkpoint. You are not here to reassure anyone of their worth while they question yours. You are a woman who deserves clarity, presence, and emotional reciprocity. You deserve someone who shows up fully, not partially, with intention, not curiosity, with action, not ambiguity. Learn to recognize those vague messages for what they are. Signs of emotional immaturity. Signals that he still sees your heart as something he can access at his convenience. Don't settle for words that sound pretty but go nowhere. As Carl Jung reminds us, you deserve love, not confusion. And that love begins with you, with not responding to what doesn't deserve your energy, with saving your softness for someone who shows up not just with words, but with actions that match them. This dynamic is more common than we like to admit. You're always there, available, attentive. He messages late at night. You respond. He says he's had a bad day. You listen. He disappears for days, then texts, "I miss you." You forgive. You become his refuge, his emotional support, his comfort zone. Always on the other end of the phone. Always with an open heart. But when you need something, he's busy. He takes hours, sometimes days, to reply. He makes excuses. "I've just had a lot going on. My head's not in the right place." Or worse, he just vanishes again. And it always seems to happen when you need clarity the most. This isn't occasional distance. It's a repetitive emotional pattern. And it wears you down because slowly it teaches you that your needs are too much. That you're asking for too much when you're asking for the bare minimum. Presence, consistency, reciprocity. And when you do receive those crumbs, they feel like a gift, not a right. But let's name it for what it is. That's not love. That's imbalance. And perhaps the hardest part is that it didn't start this way. In the beginning, he seemed present, interested, engaged, sincere. But once he sensed your emotional availability, he stopped trying. Because he believed you'd keep showing up, even if he only gave you half of himself. Even if his time was divided, his attention fragmented. And Carl Jung said something that we must etch into our hearts. You should never beg for love, attention, or affection. If it doesn't come freely, it's not worth having. Let that truth guide you. Because your love is not a reward for inconsistency. Your time is not a waiting room for emotional tourists. And your heart is not a playground for someone who only shows up when it suits him. You deserve more. Not someday. Not when he's ready. Now. And that more begins the moment you believe deep in your soul that you are already enough, even without the text, the call, or the half-hearted "I miss you." You don't need someone to remind you you're lovable. You just need to stop giving your love to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. Because when you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's emotional schedule, you break. Not all at once, but in quiet, invisible pieces that are hard to put back together. This kind of man expects you to mold yourself to his timing, to his moods, to his emotional availability. He wants you there when he feels like talking. But when it's you who needs support, he pulls away, gets distant, maybe even annoyed. He decides when the doors open and when they close, and without even realizing it, you begin to ask for permission to feel, to speak, to exist inside the relationship. This imbalance is not accidental. It's emotional control. Subtle but corrosive. Because by not being there when you need him, he creates a vacuum that forces you to chase his approval, to believe you must give more, be more, do more, just so he might stay. And before you even notice, you're locked in a one-sided dance. You invest everything while he treats your emotions like a favor he can grant when it suits him. But love? Love is not a transaction. It's not about giving in the hope it will one day be returned. Love is presence. It's balance. It's mutual commitment, emotional, not just circumstantial. Yet many women remain in this dynamic, not because they don't see it, but because they're afraid. Afraid to lose him, afraid to be alone, afraid to admit that what they've called love isn't. But staying in that space doesn't save him. It costs you. You lose your voice, your worth, your clarity, piece by piece. You begin to live in the desperate pursuit of a validation that never truly arrives. You accept the love that only appears when it's convenient. But you, my friend, deserve more than waiting around for someone who only shows up when they have nothing better to do. You deserve a love that shows up consistently. A relationship where your emotions are not a burden, where you can say, I need you, without guilt, without shame, without feeling weak. Remember this. As Carl Jung once said, love yourself enough to say no more to someone who only seeks you out occasionally. Because when you finally learn to be there for yourself, you stop accepting those who only arrive out of boredom, loneliness, or emotional convenience. You are not here to adjust to anyone's absence. You are here to build something real with someone who knows how to stay, someone who chooses you. Not just when it suits them, but when it matters most. Someone who gives what you gave. Presence, care, and truth. There's a silent but painful pattern many women know far too well. Weeks pass. No texts, no calls, no interest. And then, suddenly he reappears. A casual, hey, a lazy, what have you been up to? Soft words, meant to reconnect, as if nothing had happened. But if you look closely, you'll see a pattern. He always comes back at the same times. When he's bored, when things didn't work out with someone else, when his life feels empty, when he's sad, lonely, or just wants to feel love for a moment. And you, with your generous, open heart, you listen, you comfort, you offer your time, your words, your light, you make him feel seen, important, accompanied. But when he's fed, when his ego is satisfied, when his loneliness passes, he disappears again. As if your love was just a patch for his emptiness. As if your tenderness was temporary medicine, not something sacred. But Carl Jung said, what we believe about ourselves becomes true for us. So if you believe that love must be earned through someone else's crisis, you will spend your life being their comfort, but never their choice. You will settle for being the emotional escape, but never the emotional home. Because a man like that doesn't come back because he values you. He comes back because you serve a purpose. And you are not a purpose. You are a person, a woman, a whole human being with a heart that deserves more than to be borrowed and abandoned. So choose to believe something better for yourself. Believe that you are worthy of love that doesn't arrive in fragments, that doesn't ask you to disappear so someone else can feel powerful. Believe in a love that's whole, that's present, that stays. Because you are not someone's backup plan. You are not someone's temporary fix. You are not the in-between. You are the main story. And one day, when you stop settling, you will find someone who reads you that way too. Because your presence brings him relief, validation, a temporary distraction from his own emptiness. But he's not truly with you. He's using your energy as emotional shelter, a place to rest when the world feels too heavy, a refuge when his life slips out of his control. And then, once he feels better, once he's gathered himself, once the storm in his world has cleared, he leaves again. And yes, it's hard to accept this because it hits you where it hurts the most. Your need to feel important, wanted, special. But this is where the awakening begins, because you're not here to be someone's in the meantime. You are not a rest stop for the emotionally lost, only to be abandoned the moment they find a more comfortable, more convenient destination. And yet, many women justify these returns. Maybe he's changed. He seems different now. This time feels real. Maybe now he's ready. But listen carefully. Patterns don't lie. And if someone only reappears when life gets hard for them, when they feel lonely, bored, or empty, that's not connection. That's emotional convenience, dressed up as tenderness. A real relationship isn't built on crisis. It's built on consistency, on the good days and the hard ones. You deserve a love that shows up in fullness, not one that knocks on your door only in moments of lack. You deserve a love that stays, not one that only visits when the silence gets too loud. And yes, it may ache to see this clearly, but that pain is not punishment. It's the beginning of your return to yourself. Because when you finally decide to stop being available to someone who only seeks you from a place of emptiness, you take a massive step toward emotional dignity. When you say no to being the savior, you say yes to becoming what you truly deserve. An equal, a partner, a person chosen in truth, not out of need. Remember, you are not someone's plan B. You are not a backup. You are not a temporary escape from their loneliness. As Carl Jung said, until you value yourself, you won't value your time. And until you value your time, you won't do anything with it. So value your time, value your energy, value your voice. Don't give your light to someone who only shows up in the dark. Because when you choose yourself, you raise the standard for the kind of love that's allowed to stay in your life. You deserve to be sought with intention, not boredom. With respect, not desperation. With commitment, not emotional hunger. And the only kind of man who can do that is someone who has first chosen himself and is now ready to choose you completely. There is a moment many women fear, but also so deeply need. It's the moment you finally speak with honesty. You sit across from him, calm, clear, sincere. You don't blame. You don't explode. You simply share what's real. You name what hurts. You express what you need. You open the door to a mature, emotional conversation. But instead of meeting you there, he pulls away. He gets cold, defensive, dismissive. He shuts down. He changes the subject. He brushes your pain aside with phrases like, "You're overreacting. Everything's fine. You're being dramatic. Here we go again." And just like that, what began as a chance for connection becomes yet another emotional wall. This behavior isn't innocent. It's a form of emotional avoidance, a way to reject responsibility, to protect himself from the inner work he refuses to do. And worse, it's a subtle form of manipulation. It leaves you questioning yourself. Am I too much? Was I wrong to speak up? Maybe I'm asking for too much. But no, you are not too much. You are simply finally asking for enough. What he's doing is not love. It's avoidance masked as calm, dismissal disguised as detachment. He's not keeping the peace. He's silencing the truth. Carl Jung once said, "You've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." So try it. Approve of your heart. Approve of your voice. Approve of the woman who is brave enough to want more. Because love should never require you to become smaller, just to be tolerated. And peace should never come at the cost of your own silence. When you confront a man like this, when you finally speak your truth, and he responds with victimhood or avoidance, you're often left holding the weight of guilt. You start to doubt yourself. You wonder, was I too intense? Too emotional? Too direct? But let's be clear. An honest conversation should never frighten someone who truly wants to be with you. An emotionally mature man doesn't run from dialogue. He values it. He uses it as a bridge, not a battlefield. But a man with low emotional maturity, he turns that conversation into a war zone, where you end up cast as the villain, simply for daring to feel. He hides behind victimhood. He says things like, I can't handle this pressure. Nobody understands me. I'm always the one being blamed. And suddenly, the focus shifts, not to the hurt you expressed, not to the clarity you asked for, but to his feelings of being attacked. That, my friend, is gaslighting. It's the art of turning the conversation upside down, so that you begin to question your perception, you begin to minimize your truth. And what does that accomplish? You go quiet. You hesitate before speaking. You learn to suppress your emotions out of fear. Fear of another cold response, another eye roll, another you're being too much. And just like that, your voice begins to fade. Your truth starts to hide. Your need for clarity is buried beneath the fear of being dismissed. But listen closely. A relationship where you cannot speak is not a relationship. It's an emotional prison. You are not here to walk on eggshells, to preserve someone else's comfort. You are here to build something real. And real things? They must be faced. They must be spoken. They must be lived out loud. When a man makes you feel guilty for asking for respect, for wanting to be heard, for expressing your emotions in a calm and healthy way, he is not emotionally available. He is a man who hasn't yet learned to face himself. That's why he runs. That's why he avoids. That's why he shuts down. Because your truth holds up a mirror to parts of himself he refuses to see. Carl Jung once said, you can heal your life, but to do so, you must be willing to face what hurts. And sometimes what hurts the most is accepting that the person you love cannot love you back in the way you deserve. So stop silencing yourself. Don't shrink your feelings just to keep someone who doesn't know how to stay. Your voice is valid. Your need for clarity is not aggression. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. You are not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. And now let's talk about silence. Silence can be peace, but in the hands of the wrong person, it becomes punishment, especially when it comes from someone who knows just how deeply you care. He knows you're waiting, knows you're staring at your phone, knows you're checking to see if he's online, if he read the message, if he's going to respond, and still he says nothing. Not because he's busy, not because he didn't have time, but because he wants you to feel it. He wants you to feel uncertain, wants you to wonder if you said too much, if you pushed too hard, if it was your fault. That silence, it isn't empty. It's full of intention. It's an emotional tactic, a strategy designed to create confusion, to trigger anxiety, to control, and more often than not, it follows a difficult conversation. After you've opened up, after you've asked for clarity, after you've made yourself vulnerable, he disappears. He ghosts. He leaves you hanging. He leaves you thinking. And instead of feeling proud for speaking your truth, you're left ashamed, as if your truth was too much to carry. But Carl Jung reminds us, love never punishes. Love does not hurt. Love heals. And when someone uses silence to punish, they are not loving you. They are manipulating you. They are testing your limit, waiting for you to break. waiting for you to reach out, to apologize, to chase, to beg for forgiveness, for having feelings, for wanting connection, for asking for the bare minimum. But here's the truth. Prolonged, intentional silence is a form of passive violence. It is not silence. It is strategy. It's not just that he doesn't speak. It's that he refuses to close the conversation. He leaves you floating in the sea of unfinished sentences, unanswered messages, and unresolved emotion. That, too, is emotional control. And it is not love. He doesn't give you emotional closure. He doesn't offer understanding. He leaves you suspended in silence, in a kind of emotional limbo. And in that dark, quiet place, you start creating your own answers. You build stories to explain his absence. You justify him. You blame yourself. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I should have just let it go. This kind of behavior is deeply exhausting, not just because it leaves you without resolution, but because it leaves you alone with your pain. It teaches you something dangerous, that love hurts, that your emotions are too heavy, that every time you speak your truth, you risk punishment with distance, indifference, or silence. It chips away at your confidence, your clarity, your voice. And the most dangerous part, you begin to adapt. You begin to believe. This is just how he island. It's better not to say anything. Maybe I should just keep the peace. You start to normalize the silence, to soften your needs, to silence your voice, all to avoid the silence that follows. When your heart dares to speak. But hear me clearly. When silence is used as a weapon, you are not in a relationship. You are in an emotional battle. And you are always the one losing ground. An emotionally available man does not disappear when things get uncomfortable. He doesn't withhold his presence because you ask for reassurance. He doesn't vanish the moment you need. A little tenderness, a little honesty, a little care. Someone who truly cares shows up, even when it's hard, even when he doesn't have all the answers. He doesn't use absence to punish you for your vulnerability. Carl Jung once wrote, "You cannot make someone love you, but you can refuse to accept less than you deserve. And what you deserve is presence. Its response is a voice that doesn't fall into an abyss every time you try to connect. If he goes silent just when you've opened your heart, if he ignores you when you're most in need, if he disappears when clarity is what you crave, that is not carelessness. It is strategy. It is emotional manipulation. It is a pattern, a behavioral loop designed to control you from a distance. You are not here to beg for words. You are not here to plead for attention. You are here to be heard, seen, and respected. And silence, when used to punish, is not respect. It is a subtle, insidious form of control. It is emotional abuse disguised as space. Stop accepting the role of the one who waits, the one who stays quiet, the one who tiptoes around her own truth, to avoid being left with more silence. You have the right to relationships where communication isn't a risk, where your voice isn't met with disappearance, but with dialogue, with connection. Because the kind of silence that hurts the most is not absence, it's manipulation. And you, my friend, deserve something infinitely better. Maybe reading this stirs something inside you. A knot in your chest, a memory you try to silence, a wave of feelings that catch you off guard. Maybe you remember the messages that went unanswered, the conversations that never really ended, the days you gave everything and received so little in return. Maybe what you feel now is anger, or sorrow, or guilt, or just deep, bone-tired exhaustion. If that's the case, I want to tell you something honestly, gently, from the heart. You are not alone. Thousands of women have stood where you now stand. Women who love deeply, those who were emotionally absent, Women who waited for a call, for a message, for an apology that never came. And no, they weren't foolish. They weren't weak. They weren't needy. They were kind. They were hopeful. They were raised to believe that love meant giving everything, even when it hurt. They stayed because they had been taught to put others first, because they confused self-sacrifice with loyalty, because they believed that if they gave enough, if they stayed long enough, if they loved hard enough, they would finally be chosen. But here you are now, standing in front of a truth you can no longer ignore. A truth that may feel uncomfortable, but also deeply liberating. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Your emotional energy is sacred. Your time, your tenderness, your devotion. These are not currencies to buy affection. They are gifts, and they should only be shared with someone who knows how to hold them. Someone who honors them, values them, and never takes them for granted. Carl Jung once said, "Love who you are, what you do, and how you do it. You are enough." And that feeling of being enough, it doesn't come from whether he replies, whether he changes, whether he finally sees your worth and comes back. It comes from you, from how you see yourself, from how fiercely you protect your peace, from how often you choose stability over emotional chaos. Even when that chaos wears the mask of love, recognizing these patterns isn't being cold. It's not being harsh. It's not giving up on love. It's emotional wisdom. It's the quiet, powerful realization that you can love without losing yourself. You can care deeply without abandoning your own needs. You can set standards not because you're arrogant, but because you finally know how much you're worth. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges that lead you toward real love. They're your soul whispering, enough, because it remembers what your heart tried to forget. It knows you deserve more. You deserve a love that's clear, a love that stays, a love that doesn't vanish when things get real, a love that doesn't play games with silence, doesn't come searching for you only when it feels empty, doesn't punish you for feeling. You deserve a love that is consistent, present, and brave. A love that's built day by day, not only through words, but through actions. A love that respects you, that listens, that doesn't fear your intensity, that doesn't run from your softness. And yes, that kind of love exists. But it begins with you. It begins the moment you stop accepting what once hurt you. The moment you choose peace over patterns. When you rise not in anger, but in quiet strength. When you walk away without bitterness, but with certainty. When you finally understand, losing someone who didn't know how to stay is not a loss. It's an act of self-love that saves you. And maybe right now, you don't have all the answers. Maybe you still feel something. Maybe it still aches. That's okay. Healing isn't a straight line. There is no rule book. There is no magic timeline. But every step you take toward yourself is a revolution. Every time you choose calm over confusion, silence over drama, self-worth over temporary comfort, you rewrite your story. Carl Jung once said, "Everything's going well. Everything conspires in your favor." From this experience, only something positive can emerge. You are protected. Write those words down. Repeat them. Carry them close. Because they are true. You are safe. You are growing. You are awakening. And even if it hurts now, every day you are getting closer to the version of you who no longer accepts crumbs, who no longer chases validation, who no longer waits to be chosen, because she has already chosen herself. And that moment, that choice, that act of self-love changes everything. If uncertainty ever visits you again, and it might, remember this. You didn't come here to be someone's emotional safety net. You didn't come here to be a backup plan when it's convenient. You didn't come here to be remembered only in moments of loneliness. You came to be loved clearly, consistently, courageously. And only a man who has had the strength to choose himself first, to face his own fears, to grow, to love from wholeness, will be capable of choosing you in the way you truly deserve